Well, we solved the riddle, Paul throughout.
What's that?
How is Microsoft going to pay for all of these AI features on Windows?
They're not. You're going to pay for it, Brad.
Yep. Got him.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's fair, though, right?
I mean, we all saw it coming. So Microsoft yesterday, which somebody broke the embargo, and so it really went out at a weird time.
Yeah.
They announced Copilot Pro, which is a $20 a month subscription for your Microsoft account, I guess, that unlocks Copilot.
So actually, sorry to
Yep,
interrupt. It's for personal Microsoft 365 accounts.
there you go.
So you actually have to pay for that as well, right?
Oh,
But it is
fantastic! Even better,
yeah.
even better. And it's 20 bones a month on top of your current subscription of Office
per
365
user, by the way. There's no
yes,
family discount.
there is.
Yeah.
Did you see? I think they even have a family pack, but it's just 5 times the cost.
It's
Like
just 5 times 20.
they said,
Oh boy.
sure, why not?
Hey, you know how you were paying $100 a year for something? How do you feel about paying $100 a month for it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gives you just stuff, glossing over that lightly.
So there's something interesting going on here, but we can get to that.
Is there?
No, there is.
Well, you can't just leave us hanging.
Okay, sorry. So you get additional capabilities with the image creation capability, which used to be called Bing Image Creator, right?
Which by the
includes
way, I don't want to get off a tangent. Don't want to get off a tangent, but we're going to do it anyways.
Yep.
You know, kind of feels like Bing, like they're like, you know what, we're going to try this thing with Bing. Let's see if we can make Bing a thing. And they pulled back on that real hard and real aggressive because very clearly they learned
this is a major part of the, in the sense that AI was the story of 2023 and Microsoft was the story of AI in 2023. Part of that story is how quickly they scaled back on the branding mistakes they made early on. They did it a couple of times.
Yeah.
But de-emphasizing Bing and then, basically shoving it aside, smart. Because Bing is a broken brand. But they also did it with their consolidation of the Copilot stuff. Because I had, after that September event, I had written something where I said, there's this foundational layer that is basically Microsoft Copilot, but it's also present in these other things. And Mary Jo contacted me. She said, where did you see this? Because I can't find that anywhere. And I said, they said it. And we found the part in the talk where they actually said that. But they weren't calling them all the same thing. So in November, they just said, look, this is the same thing. And the idea is that developers are going to write plugins or whatever that run on top of this thing, and it will work in all those places where Copilot is. So they really got that right. Microsoft in the past would have run with this for years and years and just had this broken, kind of weirdly fragmented branding thing. And I think it's one of the smartest things they did was just saying, look, we screwed up. Let's just fix it,
Yeah. Anyways, you were saying something about...
Oh, yeah. So additional capabilities for the image creation stuff, which includes more like boosts or whatever, which is like the iterations you can make, peak time access, et cetera, et cetera. That's true of Copilot in general. But then the big one, the one that I was sort of alluding to, is that like ChatGPT, they're going to allow you to build your own, and they're calling them GPTs, right? And for Microsoft Copilot. And there's going to be a whole world of third-party add-ins, like I said. So you're going to be able to pull and build your own little custom things. These are like Gary, and he was working on the Microsoft. Actually, in the beginning, I think they were called Cortana bots.
Oh,
I mean, these are essentially they're in the same space, if not exactly the same thing. But the one thing that's a couple of things have become obvious about AI very quickly. It's a fog of war moment, but one is that AI is good at some things and not so good at other things, right? So AI right now is really good at summarizing. It's kind of a neat thing. So when you look at online reviews or whatever, like it's kind of a good thing for that. It's assuming that underlying data is any good. It's good for, you're reading a really lengthy article, a document. It's like, hey, here's 5 bullet points. This is what's really going on here. That's good. AI goes off the rails when you almost feed it too much data because it has too much to cherry pick from. It can't really, it makes it harder to find facts. So I think one of the great use cases of AI, and it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of this, is these limited data sets or models or whatever, right? Like one thing Leo at Windows Weekly or Twit is working on is he's really into Lisp programming, which is a really esoteric topic, but he's fed a model just textbooks about Lisp, and like that's a really good finite data set. It's
Yep.
smart. Um, and I've made the case in the past that when you look at what Microsoft is doing with the Microsoft Graph and businesses, that there's a consumer analog to this, that
Hmm.
we all have our own data, right? We have our email and calendar, we have documents, other files of all kinds, obviously videos
Hmm.
and photos, and that there's almost like a mini Microsoft Graph, like a small language model version of the Microsoft Graph for consumers. And I think this is one of those things we're going to be able to do ourselves. I mean, Microsoft will just supply this eventually, but we're going to be able to build our own little, whatever that means. So it's kind of a weird, we're in a weird
Yeah.
world of new terminology here. Build our own GPTs.
So there's a lot to what you just described.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple things, and people are going to get a little squeamy about this. Because
Okay.
first off, I totally see what you mean, because like you as a human have a ton of text related to you. You have emails, you have calendars, you have text messages,
Dude,
you
I've
have
just spent months
Teams
going
chat,
through
you have
just my
Skype,
photos. It's a nightmare.
you have photos, all that stuff. You have all
Yeah.
that data. You have the Paul Thurrott graph, if you're using Microsoft terminology, correct?
Yep.
So two things need to happen for that to be effective. One, you have to be real comfortable with Microsoft, like putting its
Well,
tentacles through your entire life. The
okay.
second part of that, which is related to the first part, you have to be inside of Microsoft. So if you have email and Outlook and
Right.
in Gmail, we already know the answer to this. Like, they're not going to be able to touch the Gmail.
Well, this goes back to the strategy thing we talked
Yep.
about back in I don't know, October, November timeframe. Like, why is Microsoft pushing that Copilot feature in Windows 11 and now Windows
Hmm.
10 so aggressively, right? And I heard this, I think it was from two different people. I can remember one of them, that it's because of this AI strategy that they need to get that in front of as many people as possible, because otherwise AI in Windows will be semi pointless. Like
Right.
you have to if you have your data in OneDrive, which is why they're pushing OneDrive so aggressively. If you have your email in Outlook, which is why they push that thing so aggressively, it's not even ready. It's like out in the world, right? Um, that's the only way this is going to work effectively. And people maybe will be so wowed by this, they're going to be like, okay, like I can tell you, $20 a month though, not going to get a lot of takers at that level. So hopefully this comes. This, sorry, I have so many. I should
Hmm.
probably just write this up, but like I have so many thoughts about this. But like one of the interesting things here is that they've gone live with this now. Like,
Oh yeah.
you know, in November, when only the biggest companies in the world and only those who opted in and only those who signed up for 300 or more seats could even access this stuff, it was like, well, we don't really have a big data set to work on here with regards to how many customers, yada, yada, yada. Well, we're going to have one now because people are either going to use this or they're
Hmm.
not. And I don't know. I mean, there's a weird numbers thing here where back in the day, Microsoft had 1 billion to 1.5 billion people who were customers of Office, meaning they had bought it at one point or gotten it with a new PC and they kept using it, whatever. When you look at Microsoft 365, commercial side, consumer side, the numbers are much smaller,
Hmm.
but in some ways, I don't know where to draw the line. Like, when does it become more lucrative? At what number of 100 million users across both does Microsoft 365 kind of break that threshold of how well Office was doing, financially over some period of time? This is going to be like that again, except on an even smaller scale, right? So there's going to be maybe at first some small single digit millions of users, eventually tens of millions, but you know, they're paying so much more per month.
Yep.
Just looking at the consumer side,
Hmm.
69 bucks a year for one
Hmm.
person, $100, I think it's $100 or $120 a year for a family, which is six people.
Hmm.
And now you're talking $20 a
Hmm.
month per
Hmm.
person. That's not exponential literally, but it's a dramatically higher charge. And I don't know that we're going to find out. That's the thing. Like there's the put up and shut up moment of 2024 when it comes to AI it's like 2 weeks into January. Like, I don't think anyone would have complained or thought anything of it if they had done this over some period of time. They're
Yeah.
doing it very aggressively, and
Yeah. Because
they could fall in their face.
they
That's a
view
real
this as a must-win scenario.
yeah. I'm just saying that there is no sense of what if I pay for a year and I save some money, right?
Yeah.
There's no sense of I have a family subscription. How can I not get this at some reduced cost?
Hmm.
Like they're in one sense they're being aggressive, but on pricing it's like, oh, they're gonna run into some headwinds here. They're doing this in the middle or like at the conclusion of a year
Mm-hmm.
in which everyone bitched and moaned about the cost of subscription services going up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, Microsoft, but I mean, for people like consumers, I think Netflix might be a little more important than, hey, Word works 2% better or whatever however that works out.
And the
I don't
problem
know.
for Microsoft is that Copilot is infinitely more expensive to run than, say,
Yes.
Netflix.
Oh yeah, no, it's a hard computer science problem, as we say in this space. Literally in this
Yep.
case.
Well,
Yeah.
see, I do think that right now they're coming out with that early adopter high price. They know that the average
Mhm.
person probably is not going to be paying for this.
No.
However, over time, just like everything else, the price in theory should compress a bit.
Oh, yes, and I'm sorry. I should be taking notes here, Brad. There's so much to this story. Yeah,
There
the other
really
bit
is.
is, I'm going to test this and find out, but I can tell you with a certain degree of certainty that none of this stuff uses an NPU.
Oh
so,
God, yeah.
so
Well,
one of the big, you were saying you have to trust Microsoft and all that kind of stuff. I mean, eventually the goal here is this should work on a combination of local and remote data and multiple sources, right? You could have email and Gmail, email and Outlook, like you said. But ideally, there would be some NPU involved on the client side that would lessen the load, if you will. Obviously, there's going to be, we're going to go back to the days of like live mesh and Windows Live Sync and all that stuff, because I think there's going to be I don't know how they're going to describe this, but there's going to be some notion of if you can bring some of your data down locally so that we can work on it there, things will be better for you and for Microsoft, right? And I don't know what that world looks like, but it's a weird problem,
Paul
and
Thread,
it's
are you
very
saying
specific.
that 2024 is the year of the PST file?
It's the year
They're
of
coming
the
back, baby.
multiple sync clients.
Exchange on prem.
Where's
the new
Ray
hot
Ozzy
thing.
when we need him?
Yeah.
There's got to
Yeah.
be a song there somewhere. It's a mess. This is a mess.
Yep.
If you just look at what so back in very late December, Microsoft silently released Copilot clients on iOS and Android, and everyone was like, "What? Why aren't they even talking about this?" Right? It's because of this stuff, right? So I'm sure on mobile there's like a lead time thing with the store, and they don't really have any control. And I'm sure Apple and Google like, screw you, we're just going to put the stuff out when we want to, not when you want. And they come up with this announcement yesterday, which I think, like you said, I think was inspired by a leak. Basically, I'm not sure they were ready exactly, but it was going to happen any second, right? Where they announced like a crazy amount of stuff, right? So they announced those two apps. They announced that, which we've been using for 3-4 weeks, whatever. They announced that they're adding Copilot to the Microsoft 365 mobile app, right, for the people that want to use the integrated experience. They announced that the Copilot for Microsoft 365 commercial is now available to businesses of all sizes, including small businesses, right? I think it supports basic and standard accounts, which are the cheapest too, right? E3, E5 is on board now. There's no 300 license, threshold to meet. And then they announced this Copilot Pro, which is like a vague, if you look at the description of it, this is like for power users, and and it's like, what is this audience? Like, not really.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the first salvo, and price reductions, but also, I don't know, a tier of Microsoft 365 for consumers that kind of has this, but you can save some money, because right now this is, and the 3-4 features that it has, so to speak, are buckets of features. One of them, the custom GPT thing, is not available. So we'll see what that looks like. I mean,
And then the other big question, which we know will come in some capacity, I would bet a significant number of dollars on this over the long haul, is which Windows AI features will be locked behind this Pro experience.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, Microsoft 365. If you think about this thing, and this is true in commercial and consumer, with the exception of the enterprise SKU that you get on commercial, right, which we don't get on the consumer side. Windows has been kind of the weak partner here, or the weak part of it, if you will. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with Windows per se, but rather that there's nothing let me think. I'm just well, I mean, you get more OneDrive storage, but I mean, like you don't get like Windows features like through the subscription like you do on the Office side. And I think you're right. I think this is going to be the year where we finally see that, and this will be the sneaky way, and maybe the only way, where Microsoft finally gets to a kind of what we could call a Windows subscription, right? Which is something people have feared and predicted for years and years,
Yep.
but they can't. They can't. You know, people think of Windows as being free, but what about we're going to tier off? I mean, they already have SKUs, Brad, right? Maybe they need one Windows SKU now. And the tiers are you're paying a subscription to get the pro features or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, but, pro features could include such things that we're already aware of. Backup, right? You can get additional backup storage.
That's
you
right.
get AI functionality, and then I'm sure they could dabble in some other useless things that whatever to try to fill out the SKU list.
Dabble is a good word. I feel like dabble is the type of thing you do with such things as like witchcraft.
Yeah. I mean,
know.
imagine how expensive this would get if they tried to do this. So they give you the AI stuff, which would mean a minimum floor of like $20. Let's say you get a bundle discount, so it's down to 15. And then they toss in Game Pass, and then they toss in like a Microsoft 365 sub. Like you're going to be talking like $50 a month.
Well, yeah, except like no one's gonna pay that. The thing is, $20 a month. $20 a month is like that Uber subscription we used to talk about, and they actually kind of had for a little while. Remember those things you could buy around Christmas time? They're like a bundle of the services, like back when they had Groove and Xbox Music or whatever. But yeah, Microsoft 365 as we know it today on the consumer side, which brings the storage and the apps, right? Xbox Game Pass plus this for $20 a month. Actually, you could. I'd have to do the math and think about that a little bit, but yeah, because honestly, Xbox
$20
Game Pass,
a month for that. Sure, there's no way they're going to sell it.
But that's
for
not what it is, right? So it's more like it's closer to 30. Yeah, it's close to $50 a month. It's probably over 50. No, it's close to 50. It's about $50 a month. And I'm sorry, but like that's that's when people are like, you know what? There were free Office suites. I think it's you know, that's silly.
I think Office just becomes the low-hanging fruit, and it's like, hey, that's free because it costs them relatively nothing compared to like the AI and the Xbox Game Pass and the storage.
Well, I want to see where this stuff. I actually signed up for this morning, by the way, and because obviously I need to write about this, but I'm curious to see where these things pop up. Right? I assume, and maybe I shouldn't. Actually, I shouldn't. That this will be in the desktop apps, but I bet a lot of it's only in the web apps too. This is something I just don't know. So I'm gonna go look this up.
The only thing I care about is how it compares to like Virgin ChatGPT, whatever you want to call it, like the original, because I do pay for that and I use it all the time. So I'm like actually a target customer for this. However, like my use cases are very specific. I use it for a lot of Python. So if it's not great with Python, then whatever, it's out. It should be good. It should be fine.
Yeah, you'll need that. I don't know, but I mean, there's going to be a whole. This is the same conversation we always have with anything that's kind of business related. But I realize this is not just business. But do you pull in like Slack and Notion and Google Workspace and kind of build your own little thing, or do you just give Microsoft all the money and use whatever they have, right? And so they're kind of doing that game again, which no problem there. I mean, that makes sense, but. Yeah, I mean, for specific use cases, there are going to be things that are probably better. Or here's one. I mean, for most people, right? I can use ChatGPT 4 or whatever it's called, DALL-E 3 or 4, whatever it is, image creation capabilities for free. So I have to wait for non-peak hours, I guess, or it's going to be a little slower. Who cares?
Yeah.
Unless it gets worse.
Unless I bet they hard gate that eventually. It's like you get 3 a week or 3 a month. Or
they could tier it up perfectly, and I mean tier it up, not tear it up. By you get ChatGPT for 3 now, or whatever, or 4, and then we get the turbo stuff and whatever on the page. There's all kinds
economic
of ways.
levers are right in front of us, and Microsoft's just trying to figure out like, okay, we'll give them the $20, they get everything, and then it's like, well, how do you drive up demand? Well, you get them addicted to the free version. They can create whatever DALL-E 2 images, whatever you want to call it.
Right, you could create
and
cartoons.
it's like, wow, I want something better. So you give them like 2 per month or something, so they can at least, right? You can see how they dribble this along.
I think a lot of people are not going to find a compelling reason to do this.
I just tend to agree with you.
This is the only, and this is what I mean. Like, this is where I think Microsoft could fall flat. There are going to be people who really need it and use it and know how to use it, and they're going to do great with it. But I think most people are going to look at the price and say, like, I am getting along fine without this. I'm fine. I don't need it.
Yeah. So
We'll
one of
see.
the things I've come to the realization with a lot of this AI stuff is if you're using it for search, like it's completely valueless. It has value, but there's not enough
Yeah.
value to pay.
No, it's,
It has true value when it's creating something for you, such as an
mhm.
image, such as a Python script, such as writing text. Like that is the only place that it adds value worth paying for. And if you're not
Right.
in that scenario, then you're not going to pay.
you know, it just occurred to me. I spent much of the past, I'm going to call it a month and a half now. I don't remember the exact time frame, but really struggling with some of the security topics that I've been writing about. And I now wonder, is this something? Could AI have helped me say, like, look, I've got these 7 different versions of this document. I can't seem to come up with a clear way to communicate this. Could I feed this thing in and have it spit out something that made sense? I actually have no idea, but I'm
So
trying to
the
think of
answer is
some.
yes and no.
Yeah.
From my experience of doing very similar things, because I've used it for that scenario, is
Right.
it'll get you close. You couldn't give
Well,
it.
I mean, close was better than not there at
Yeah,
all. I mean, I eventually got there, but um,
that's
I've never struggled. Well, I in the past I've given up. I compare this to things like Azure when it first came out, or quantum computing, which was one of my funniest professional moments, um, where I was like, I just don't. I'm I'm sorry. I don't think that I'm an idiot, but I don't understand this topic at all, and I can't write about it in any way that's meaningful. But it didn't matter because these things are enough to the side of what I do that it's like, who cares? This one, I kind of actually, security, I should say, I kind of have to get right, you
hmm
know, and I couldn't just ignore it. So I actually just sat there and then I got to see how stupid I really was because I got to struggle with it for weeks. And that was not a good experience. But I getting closer with AI, maybe this is something that's there's some value there. $20 a month.